today, Bluetooth-enabled wearables, are they causing you more harm than good? You need to listen to this podcast, guys. I know so many people who walk around with Bluetooth-enabled headphones in all day long, and if that's you, you need to listen to this. If you wear an Oura ring or an Ultra Human ring, you need to listen to this. All right, spoiler alert, they're not so bad. In fact, they're fine. Well, it depends whether they're in airplane mode or not. But there is so much good content in here, all related to Wi-Fi sensitivity, EMFs, electromagnetic field, electricity sensitivity, and lots more. Welcome to Zestology. This is the podcast all about energy, vitality, and motivation. I'm feeling pretty zesty at the moment, walking around in the bright sunshine in Portugal. And it has been pretty special, and I think I've said this before, but when we moved here, all our buddies here said we prefer it in winter to summer. I thought, I won't, I'll prefer it in summer because I like hot weather. But actually, this is incredible here. I am the boring one who keeps going on about how lovely it is. It's honestly, it's hat weather all the time. I'm not wearing a hat at the moment, I'll be catching the sun. So it makes it nice and easy to get primal, get outside, get away from the EMFs and the Wi-Fi and the screens. And Nicolas Pineault is today's guest on Zestology. He's been on before, and we actually met in person in the summer at the Health Optimization Summit in London, and I rate him so highly what he does. He's a world-renowned, I would say, journalist, specialising in electromagnetic fields. And as you'll hear, there's quite a lot of various sidelines that have presented themselves to him based on what he does, and he's basically just said no thanks to all of them because he's so focused on his research and his journalism and putting the good content out into the world. And what I like about him is he knows his niche so well. I can ask him anything and he will answer it. So I did put out to some of my followers that I was going to be interviewing Nicolas, and got a load of questions. So it's sort of question and answer session, this, and it meanders a little bit based on some of the things that I wanted to ask as well, but I got lots of questions from you guys and I put them to him. So here is Nicolas Pineault, or Nick Pineault, on Zestology. Nick, good to see you again. How are you?
I'm good, Tony. What about you?
Yeah, really good, thanks. Yeah, last time we met up was in person at the Health Optimization Summit in London. And how's things going with you? Is awareness increasing of the EMF world since we last met, would you say?
You know, I think it's been steadily increasing. I hear more and more conversation in, of course, our small world of health-conscious people. That is, in the media, the mainstream, and the average layperson on the street. I don't know if it's increasing that much, but I think that with the pandemic, a lot of people are starting to get into health. This idea that you need to take control of your health. You cannot wait around and or take a magic pill, right? So a lot of people realize, you know what, I should work on prevention. And it leads me sometimes, it leads them to your work, my work. And sometimes they hear about EMFs and they say, you know what, my phone right next to my bedstand or under the pillow might be a cause of why I don't sleep that good. And when they start doing these changes, they see a difference. So I think it's moving in the right direction, but it's a few days ago, as we're recording this, we learned that in the US, the NTP program, which is a national toxicology program that found really dramatic effects on this type of radiation on rats. They found a clear link with carcinogenicity. So they found that in 2018, and now they announced we're going to stop doing research because they don't have enough resources. So the US is officially stopping research on EMFs while we're rolling out 5G and 6G and 7G and satellites. So It just shows you that there are a lot of powerful forces at play, and they're trying all they can to let us know that there's no problem with this. There's no problem. Technology is good. Business is good. We're going to roll out all these Gs and the satellites, and we need to be brighter than them and say, you know what, the early research was concerning enough. We need to use our everyday technology in a way that is more prudent, because we know there's something to this. And we know that now it's being systematically defunded. That's really the opposite of where we should go. So again, it's not surprising to me as an activist for the last, 7 years, because this is really what's been happening again and again. We find effects and suddenly the funding runs dry. It's pretty much what happens in this field. And many scientists I've been chatting to, and while recording my podcast, my summits, they each tell me that, it's very hard to get funding for this topic these days, which is crazy to me because it should be, a booming scientific research topic because it's so important and everyone is exposed. But it's really the opposite. It's systematically being defunded as we speak.
My goodness. Well, let's try and get the word out there. I've got a whole list of questions that I want to ask you.
Perfect.
I want to cover EMFs, electrosensitivity, your upcoming summit, loads of other, and sort of individual questions that I've got that people have come to me with because they knew I was interviewing you. Are we happy to sort of go through them?
Yeah, let's fire away.
Yeah, it's difficult because I'm sensitive to a lot of things, Nick. I'm Mr. Sensitive. And actually, I'm not that sensitive to EMFs. So I think when people aren't that sensitive, they don't take these things as seriously, which is actually almost worse than when you're the canary in the coal mine, at least you know to get out.
That's true. That's true. And someone asked me recently by email, I'm very sensitive. Is it a blessing or a curse? What do you think, Nick? And I said, there's different opinions on it. I think that when you are reactive to EMFs, some people don't like the word sensitive because it kind of gives the impression that some people are not affected. I think we're all affected to different degrees. However, I can tell you that people with hypersensitivity to EMFs is becoming a living hell living in a city. Some people cannot live in a city. They cannot even sleep if they're inside a city just because of the ambient electro pollution, so to speak. So in that sense, it's a curse because our society still is polluting with this electro smog over and over. So what can you do? You cannot even live in Montreal where I live. You cannot live in San Diego, San Francisco, Paris. I mean, you cannot visit these cities. So I think in a sense it is a curse, but at the same time, these people tend to be way more prudent toward exposures. So in the long run, you might be healthier than your neighbor who doesn't feel anything. And this is really, is it a blessing to not feel anything when you talk on the phone, feel perfectly fine, and then get a brain tumor? Well, most people would say no, it is a curse because you're not realizing that over time you might get an acoustic neuroma and then become deaf. Or you might, even worse than that is, of course, glioblastoma. And I mean, most people die from it. So the reality is this is a small fraction of cell phone users that might get a brain tumor from talking on the phone. But I'm increasingly concerned about the Bluetooth earbuds that people wear 24/7 or other technologies that are very close to the body, because basically we have no research on these. I can barely find anything mentioning Bluetooth in the scientific literature, even though when you look around in the street in Montreal, a lot of people have these, as accessories for extended periods of time, not just 1 hour of a phone call, but it's always in the ear. And I'm only left to wonder and be concerned about what it's going to do for the long run. Are we going to see even more brain tumors, but from these Bluetooth thingies or not? I'm not sure, but I'm even wondering if it's contributing to hearing loss also. But, it's just more of a concern I have.
Let's talk about that then. Because some of those earbuds are not just Bluetooth enabled. Is it Bluetooth or Wi-Fi? How do they work?
Bluetooth.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Because I saw you were wearing an Oura ring there, or is it an ultra-human ring or an Oura ring?
It's the Oura. The Oura can be put on airplane mode whenever you want, and it stores the data locally in the ring.
Yeah.
So what I like about this type of wearable is that you don't have to expose the body for extended periods of time to Bluetooth, every second to... I don't have to sync this to my phone all the time. Like, I don't want to know in real time what are my stress levels. I'm not that I'm not that extreme about it. I think maybe some people want to monitor while they do podcasting. Oh no, my stress levels are going up, so I'm going to calm down. I mean, I'm not that extreme. So I look at it once in the morning. That's it, to see kind of my overall recuperation from workouts, my overall, sleep quality, the length of time I slept, and whether alcohol affected me. It did. I mean, one glass of wine my sleep is poor,
Crazy,
but
isn't it? Yeah.
yeah, it's crazy. So it makes me aware of what impacts my sleep, and that's it. So I put it out of airplane mode for 2 minutes, and then on airplane mode, no radiation whatsoever for the rest of the day. And that's true. This is really, I think, what companies that do these wearables should think about. Can it be stored locally so we minimize exposure? And a lot of them are built in a very poor way where they have to always be synced to the phone every couple seconds or even more frequently than that. And I think this is just poor design on their part.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if you want extreme, there you go. I've got two on. Because I've got an ultra-human ring on one thumb and I've got an Oura ring on the other. And the ultra-human ring, at the moment, you can't put in airplane mode.
Gotcha.
Which I'm very disappointed by.
Yeah.
But apparently that is incoming. And I do think it's important. I mean, and there's probably less of a signal on these rings than there is on the earbuds.
Yes,
and the earbuds are closer to your brain as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
For sure. Well, that's exactly, let's think about the risks. Is it very dangerous to have something that would be, emitting or causing oxidative stress on my middle finger or your thumb? Not that much. However, when I sleep, I tend to sleep like a baby,
Yeah.
So the ring would be close to my brain in that sense, maybe for extended periods of time. So yes, it's a low-level signal, but regardless, I'd like to minimize it if it can be minimized. So hearing that this new company is trying to do the same, I think it's the right direction, because why would you ask for more EMF radiation in a world that we've got plenty of EMF radiation around us? So if we can have manufacturers that minimize these emissions, I think it's going to serve everyone. But for sure, the earbuds, they're not only in the ear, but they are deeper in the ear compared to a phone. A phone would be pressed against the ear, but the earbud is inside. So chances are the signal is even closer to the brain, and a few millimeters closer to the brain will in fact mean a big change in exposure for the worse. So that's my concern, and I cannot even find good data on the real levels of emission from these tested independently. So maybe a project for me and colleagues, but it's quite an undertaking. But it should be done, just like consumer reports should be all around this, making sure that these everyday gadgets actually follow the rules. And with the phone gate alert, I don't know if you heard from France several years ago, but even more recently, there were massive controversies over the iPhone 12 that was basically found to exceed the regulatory limits in France, and then they had to update it to basically, now if you own an iPhone in France that is at the iPhone 12, it has a special software which will lower the radiation it emits, because it used to be over these very permissive regulatory limits. But the thing is, most phones go over the limit, and that's still a completely unresolved issue. So
one thing I heard on that is that the iPhone 12 was the first iPhone that really started to emit a lot more in terms of, and funnily enough, I've still got an iPhone 11, which seems to work perfectly for me. But I know some of the advice from some of the people in your world is stick to an iPhone 11 or earlier, because the radiation got a lot more once it went to iPhone 12.
Yeah, I couldn't say if that's really the 12. I know that once you get into the 5G realm, 5G enabled, you might have worse exposures, including exposures to other types of fields, the millimeter waves, if the antennas are installed in where you live, which is the case in certain downtown areas in certain cities. It's kind of a niche technology, after all, that is not used as much as they originally planned. But regardless of the phone you have, you should use it in a smarter way. Airplane mode when it's in the pocket, not use it right next to your ear. Instead, use wired earbuds or the air tubes also that are very good. to talk on the phone or speakerphone if you're in a place where you're not on the tube or somewhere where you're gonna annoy every neighbor that are riding right next to you. So of course be respectful, but try to create distance between your phone and your face, regardless of the phone model you have. But I'm afraid that with 5G, the phones are getting worse in a sense, and they've tried at the FCC and different regulatory bodies to, let's say, circumvent rules to make it even more permissive than before, to be able to have the 5G antennas in there. So there's all sorts of shenanigans that the industry is doing, but it's really the opposite of where we should be going. Again, the message usually is...
Remind people why they should be worried. I mean, because a lot of people are listening to this and thinking, well, it's just my phone, and look at me, I'm fine.
Well, look, what your phone is emitting is radio frequency radiation. In 2011, WHO, and that's a branch called the International Agency for Research on Cancer, or IARC, they said this is a class 2B carcinogen. That was 2011. But since then, we have new major studies, and epidemiologists have been saying since 2018, that's several years ago now, that it should be reclassified as a class 1 carcinogen. A class 1 is a definite carcinogen in the same category as smoking and asbestos, for example. So would you smoke without knowing that this is bad for your health? Nowadays, it's hard to, right? You get to live in a cave. You might still decide to smoke. You might still decide to use your phone, but it comes with a risk. And the risk is carcinogen. But to me, the carcinogenicity of phones is just one aspect, and it's a long-term one. It's a, scary one. Oh, brain tumor, dying suddenly, from having something that grows uncontrollably in your brain or neck. It's kind of scary. But to me, it's almost equally as scary having your sleep impacted and not knowing about it. Because think about what happens if I reduce your sleep quality by 5%, but over your lifetime. It will change what your potential is. So we're just talking about wellness here.
Yeah.
Optimizing your everyday mood, energy level, and the sleep quality aspect is so key. And we don't know to what extent it will shift your brain waves in the wrong direction and impact your sleep. But there's decent data from years ago showing that participants in a study that were exposed to their phone 30 minutes before sleep basically had insomnia for an hour after this exposure because their brainwaves could not go back to normal where they need to fall to start the sleep cycle. So it will have an interference on your sleep cycle. So right there, it's not cancer, it's not a brain tumor, it's not as scary, but it needs to be part of this conversation. And this is really why I think people should be more respectful or prudent towards this technology. And everything that applies to phone can apply to Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, and anything that is wireless, because that's the same type of radio frequency radiation we're talking about.
Yeah, and you have to remember that I always sort of bring it back to the fact that we're very primal beings, and humans have lived for hundreds of thousands of years and we're energetic beings as well, without these sort of interferences to our electrical sort of flow around the body. And therefore, our bodies will be reacting to it in a different way. And you could argue that, the massive increase in sort of degenerative diseases and dementia and that sort of thing, you could argue that all sorts of health issues that have popped up over the last 60, 70 years are down to things like EMFs, processed foods, and so on. So I think that's the way that I try to appeal to my mates, but they still just put their phone in the pocket. Mind you, I do as well, but I use one of those gadget guards. Interrupting this podcast for one moment to remind you that it is brought to you by my friends at Bioptimizers. I am so pleased to partner with them again, refocusing in January after the madness of the holiday season, which seemed to go on for absolutely months. And as well as focusing on diet, stress and sleep, I'm focusing on supplements as well. And I've been taking their magnesium a lot as things come to an end because, well, it helps you fall asleep, stay asleep and wake up refreshed. It doesn't help you go to bed on time. But if you can do that bit, it will help you stay asleep. At least it really does for me as well. It is the only full spectrum magnesium supplement with 7 unique forms of magnesium that your body can actually use and absorb. I exclusively recommend Magnesium Breakthrough. And, if you're struggling to return to your health routine in 2024, I have a lesson to share, and that is focus on the big stuff. Prioritize healthy eating, exercise, stress reduction, and above all, really good quality sleep. And that involves taking a good supplement like Magnesium Breakthrough and then going to bed on time. I can't help you with the second bit, but I can help you with the Magnesium Breakthrough. If you're interested in taking that supplement that I have been talking about for a long time on this podcast, you can head over to bioptimizers.com/Zestology. That is bioptimizers.com/Zestology, and use the code Zestology10. So it's Zestology10 for 10% off. This podcast is also brought to you by my online program, the Healthy AF Method, the mindset method that transforms your health. And it's been brilliant. It's been so exciting doing this in 2024 because we've got an online community and I speak to a lot of people individually as well because it's on WhatsApp, so people can just slide into my DMs if they've got a question. And it's just been so brilliant refocusing on all of this stuff at the start of 2024. It is the chance to heal, optimize, and transform your health with NLP and energy psychology. This is my proven signature health mindset program, and I would love you to come and join me and embark on a transformation in 2024. Head to TonyWrighton.com/healthy if you're interested in taking part. I'd absolutely love to welcome you. And again, if you use the code Zestology10, you can get 10% off just by being a listener to Zestology. Just to let you know what we work on in this transformative program, it is all about using NLP to transform your health and your life by embarking on a health transformation, helping your healing and living the healthy AF lifestyle. And I think also I would say elevating our health IQ. It's really, really important that, it's emotionally and mentally what's going on when you think about health affects so much what's going on physically. And if you can start to set and achieve health milestones by using this stuff, that is really satisfying. So it's TonyWrighton.com/healthy. Use the code Zestology10 for 10% off that, 10% off the Magnesium Breakthrough as well. And I'd love you to come and join us in January. This is the time when we all reset and refocus, and I'd love to be a part of that with you. That's it. Back to the show. So I've got a few quick fire questions for you now, Nick.
Cool.
And I've got a feeling I know what you're going to say to this one. I've got a gadget guard which apparently sends the signal out the back of the phone. And so I put it in my pocket with the screen facing my balls, for want of a better word. Is that working or not?
I think some of them are working. One company I like is Shield Your Body. If the design is done properly and it's really, a shield between your thigh and your genitals and the phone, well, in that case, it is, deflecting a lot of the radiation away. Mm-hmm. What I talked to the owner, and he's very, very realistic about what the product does and does not. Is it better to not have a phone? Yes. Is it, better to have a phone that is live and emitting 100%, or is it better to have it with a case or with some sort of blocker? You're better with the blocker. So it's okay to me that people want to use gadgets that make EMF mitigation a little bit easier on their life. I don't necessarily have a problem with it. I think that some of these gadgets sometimes are oversold. Like some people would use, a sort of phone case, but they still would use it to their head. I don't like that because we don't know if there's some radiation is seeping through at certain angles. And if you use it improperly, well, you still might get the brain cancer risk. And I don't want to risk that, where I tell people to use a product and tell them, you use this product or you install this chip on your phone and now you're completely protected. I wouldn't feel good about them coming back in 20 years saying, Nick, well, I know you told me I was completely protected. I still got a brain tumor. What do we do now? Well, so when the risks are life-threatening, I don't play around with things. So I say, don't put it to your head, regardless of any case, anything like that. if you have it in your pocket and you can deflect some of the radiation away, is it a smart thing to do? I think so.
What about, let me see if I've got it behind me. I have been in touch with this company quite a bit, and I see a lot of the people that I respect in this world using, no, maybe it's not here. It's the Leela Quantum various products. They contacted me, and I was very sort of skeptical because that's my natural default. I like to approach things with a sort of journalist's skepticism, but I also like to have an open mind. A lot of the people in this world that I respect quite like this stuff, but to me, the concept of quantum energy is too woo-woo to apply to 5G. But I'm still interested, and I still sometimes wear it. So I'm open to being persuaded. What do you think about their products?
I have reserves about this entire category of product, and I think that the way that their benefits are communicated is not does not reflect the scientific reality. So I do think that some of these products are able to prove that they can partially reduce the biological effects of EMFs. Is it that they make us more resilient? Certain things you can wear on the neck will strengthen your biofield, for example. Is it that it helps us on a mitochondrial level to keep a better stability at the cell or mitochondrial level? So therefore, when you have the chaos coming in, the different frequencies, you are more stable. Therefore, you have less effects. Maybe. So the exact mechanisms are unclear to me, but are they completely protective? Where again, if they say, you wear this on your neck, now you can talk on the phone, you can blast your head with phones and it wouldn't do anything. I don't like, and I'm not convinced by this type of assurance that some of the marketing around these devices can communicate. So it's really, instead, what should be said, I think, is this could help reduce the biological effects of EMFs. And if they are used in a context where people are still prudent and still, create distance, turn off at night, and all the things I've been talking about, I don't have a problem with them. Where I have a problem is if people start talking on the phone and be reckless because they think they are completely protected. And that's really the problem I have with it.
Yeah. What about electrosensitivity then? I know your upcoming summit focuses on that. That's going to be brilliant. I'm going to really enjoy digging into that. And I've always, one of the things that I know people have been in contact about is living near things like train lines. And is that, when we bought our house in London a few years ago, there's a train line quite close. And I remember really studying the maps to see just how close it was. Does that affect people?
Well, it really depends. Train lines could have high voltage power lines running, right. Just the tracks could be electrified, of course, which creates a large magnetic field. But it really depends on whether that field is strong enough when it enters your home. And sometimes it might not be strong. Even some people live very close to high voltage power lines, but it turns out, the magnetic field is small. Other people would live very far away from power lines, but the magnetic field is so large that their home is in this bubble of stress. And really how to determine this is to have an EMF meter and look at the magnetic reading in milligauss and make sure that, it's not higher than 0.5 to 1 in your front yard. If it is you're outside your home and it's still elevated, it's not something in building biology that they would consider safe levels. Of course, if you go to health authorities or regulatory bodies, they would say, oh no, this is completely safe. But in building biology, they are not, they don't have the same mindset. It's really what would be the safest levels possible for great health, which is different than what health authorities consider the quote-unquote safe. And of course, scientists that I follow don't even consider that our regulatory bodies are right on. They consider them, completely inadequate to protect the public. So that's a story for another day. But when it comes to the being close to a power substation, high voltage power lines, even a tube line or anything like that, you got to look at magnetic field exposure. And of course, noise, which could be another aspect of, a healthy building. If you live too close to noise, it might be a problem for your everyday health as well.
It's funny you say that. Obviously, I'm living in Portugal now, and a year ago we went and lived in Thailand for 3.5 months, and then we came back in April to our lovely house in West London, and we're right on the flight path, and nobody noticed it because you live right over the flight path to Heathrow, and you just get on with it.
Yeah.
But after 3 months on a tropical island, we noticed, both of us, me and my wife, noticed every plane, every noise, and it was almost unbearable. So loud. I've never noticed it before. So I guess you get acclimatized to it, but we did notice that, and you get used to it in the end. But so with those meters, I've got one of those meters here as well. Let me see if I can get that out, because there's about 5 different settings you can put it on, isn't there?
It depends on the meter.
Yeah.
You might be what type of meter do you have?
One of those ones that sort of goes from. Let me see.
You might have the Trifield TF2 in that case.
That's exactly what I've got. Yeah,
it's very common. So this one would look at different things. The Trifield is a decent meter for magnetic fields, and that would be the MF reading. I don't know if they say MF or ELF, magnetic or something like that. So that would be the reading, and you're going to see milligauss on there. So MG, small m, big G. You want 1 or below in your front yard, or ideally in any room, in the middle of the room, it should be 0.5, 1. If you see it elevated, 6, 8, 15, this is where there might be something in the home that creates these problems. Sometimes it's something as stupid as a wiring error in one breaker could be not creating an electric fire, an electric shock. So everything works on an electrical standpoint. If you ask an electrician, is everything okay in this home? They would say yes. However, the wiring is made so that there's a separation between 2 circuits that creates this big bubble of magnetic fields. Yeah. Sometimes it can be solved in 2 minutes by an electrician. Wow. So it's almost stupid. Yeah. So having these readings done professionally by a building biology consultant, for example, is something to consider in any home for anyone, in my opinion.
Okay, we've got a few minutes left, got a couple more. Someone who knew I was interviewing you today said, ask Nick if he was going to buy a new house, would he take his EMF meter with him when he looked around it?
Yes. I would look at least at, like, outside the home, what are the background readings in wireless that I'm getting? The Trifield is okay for that, but having more professional meters, Safe Living Technologies is a good company to get like better wireless meters that are a little bit more sophisticated, maybe $300 to $400 range. I would look at that. Because again, depending if it's a condo, I would look, okay, what are neighbors exposing me to, and I could take good decisions. And I would look in the middle of each room with a magnetic field reader, trying to attain 1 milligauss or under. Because these issues with magnetic fields, if you live near a power line, what can you do about it? Turn off the power line? No, of course not. So it's something where I would not live with my family within, that high exposure to power lines, because it cannot be shielded against. And that's why I'm telling you this. You cannot really put a panel or anything to block the magnetic field. It goes through metal. It goes through everything. There are special materials, but I mean, just a square of it is $100 or something. So it's not sustainable to shield against magnetic fields. So yes, for sure, I would bring a meter, and I would get probably a death stare or something very bizarre from, the realtor.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing exactly? And that would scare people. But there's a way to frame the discussion and just say, I'm weird. I just have to do this. And,
they'll take your money. It's okay. Yeah. I
exactly.
would probably do the same, potentially with not a mold meter, like a damp meter as well.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
I would be interested in that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, I think that's really fascinating. And I just think it's so interesting that there's the sort of immediate, you might feel 5% better, but there's also in 20 years' time, you might not have a tumor where you don't want it as well.
Yeah.
So there's so much to think about, Nick, and I always get sort of very inspired by chatting to you, because it's the sort of thing with me, because I'm not so hot on this that I am in so many other areas. I let it slip a bit, and then I'm like, oh yeah, I better do those things. That, I mean, you know what it's like. You check your phone, like, oh, I haven't put my Oura ring into airplane mode again.
Yeah, for sure.
So easy to do, isn't it?
Yeah, well, you got to develop these habits around EMFs. If you're thinking about it all the time, it becomes very, it takes a lot of place. And I know people have to think about so many issues these days. Okay, what do I put in my food? And, oh, no plastic, and I should change this in my kitchen. It becomes complicated. So, of course, setting your Wi-Fi on the timer is valid. And just developing these habits before bed, and trying maybe to wire your computer if you can, if you have a workstation, kind of working on these. And these are things you can develop. And I don't think about EMF exposure on an everyday basis. I know what I've already done to minimize EMFs at home, and very rarely do I think about it in truth.
Yeah, good. Well, what is one, I've asked you this before, but I'm going to ask you again, what is one book you'd recommend and one tip for living with more energy and vitality?
Yes, well, I'll recommend the book, The Invisible Rainbow by Arthur Furstenberg. My book on EMFs, I could have plugged my own book, but it's just a very basic guide, the non-tinfoil guide to EMFs. But Arthur Furstenberg's book, The Invisible Rainbow, is kind of the Bible of electricity and what it does to the body. It is a riveting, interesting read, because it goes back to this at the end of the 1700s and the early experiments. So to me, someone who is interested in history, in those biological effects as well, it is heavily referenced, and it's an eye-opener, to say the least. And for better energy, what would I say? Taking breaks throughout the day. That's kind of what I need. What I'm trying to do this year, a little bit better than before, is having a countdown timer on my computer every 25 minutes, getting up from my workstation, doing the dishes, doing something else than staring at a computer. And in 2023, I found myself, sometimes spending 4 hours straight on the computer, and then, you get up and you feel, oh my God, what have I done? I'm buzzed and I lose my energy. So when I take frequent breaks, at the end of the day, I feel a little bit more centered, even if I work for extended hours at a computer. But, just interjecting these 5-minute breaks here and there where you're using another one of your senses, like touch, like doing dishes. It's kind of stupid, or stretching, doing something else than just being in front of a computer kind of helps you balance your brain a bit.
Yeah. Nick, I think people should hire you to come and look around houses when they're considering renting or moving in. That'd be great having you there. Bring all your gear.
Yeah, well, there's people that are even more competent than me. In the UK, there's Guy Hudson at Beneficial Environments. There's Gillian Hughes that is at emf-protection.co.uk, I think. But there's in the US, there are several good building biologists. There's Brian Hoyer also from Shielded Healing. So I decided against having my building biology, certificate, just because I'm so busy with research, and I just really decided to focus on awareness.
Right.
So if I had to do it for myself, I would hire someone. So don't hesitate to hire professionals. I think it's something that will really pay off in the future if you invest in it right now.
That's great. Do you know what? If I ever do buy a place here in Portugal, I think I'll do exactly that. That's really, really good idea. Yeah. Because it's the sort of thing, once you bought, you can't sort it out then, can you? But
exactly.
Yeah, Nick, look, you're doing great work. Thank you for everything you do and for inspiring me and people listening again today. You got the summit coming up.
Yes.
What's the address for the summit?
EMFhazards.com. And that's where you're going to find, everything about EMF dangers and electrosensitivity. My goal is to really open people's eyes to the fact that a lot of people are more sensitive than they think. And it starts on April 11th until the 14th. And it will also now be a possibility to buy the replays all year long after that period. So if people stumble upon this interview later, they can still purchase the recordings as well.
Yeah, great. And remind me near the time, because I put a link in the newsletters and that sort of thing as well. And definitely send it out to I've got 2 newsletters, my own for this podcast and everything else, but also the histamine intolerance one, where people are very interested in EMF. So they will love that.
Nice to see you.
See you later.
There you go, that's it. Thanks as always for listening to the podcast. Do follow me on Instagram, where I post all sorts of biohacking related content, silly memes and videos on the fly. And that is at Tony Wrighton. And love to hear from you, love to hear what you think about the EMF content and everything else. This podcast is brought to you by my podcast partners for, it's been over 2 years now. It is Magnesium Breakthrough. And if you go to biooptimizers.com/Zestology, you will get a 10% discount if you use the code Zestology10. In fact, that discount goes up to about 28%, depending on how many bottles you buy of the wonderful Magnesium Breakthrough. I couldn't do without it. I brought about 6 bottles out here to Portugal. I'm down to the last one, so I need to order some more. And the great news is they deliver everywhere. That Zestology 10 code works worldwide, wherever you are. And newsflash, it works on all their products, not just Magnesium Breakthrough. So if you're looking for a magnesium product and you've tried everything, I think the best thing to do is to combine all the different types of magnesium, because you've got magnesium glycate, for example, you've got magnesium citrate, you've got magnesium threonate. I've tried all of those separately and they're all fine, but what you want is to sort of get as much available magnesium in the body as possible, and that is what Magnesium Breakthrough does. It combines them all. I've recommended this to so many people now, and I know a lot of you use it already, but if you're one of the few who haven't, then you can go to biooptimizers.com/Zestology, use the code Zestology10, and in fact you can get that 10% discount on all Biooptimizers products. That's it. As always, thank you for listening, and have a great week. I'll see you next time.